The crystalline throne hall of Shira Prime shimmered like frozen starlight. Pillars of translucent mineral caught the glow of 100 floating lanterns, scattering pale blue reflections across the polished floor. Every line of the chamber spoke of Valari perfection, angles precise, symmetry flawless. Except for her. Princess Erin Valaris entered slowly, her silver brace clicking softly against the crystal tiles. Her gown trailed like flowing water, elegant enough to silence anyone who might dare mock her openly, but whispers still swirled behind jeweled masks. Damaged, one voice hissed. Unfit, another murmured. No mate will claim her, came the final sting. Erin heard every word, though her face remained serene. Years of training had taught her to keep her chin high, her voice steady, her gaze calm. But inside, the words cut. She reached the dais where her father, Emperor Calith, presided. His expression betrayed nothing, neither pride nor shame. He was a ruler before he was a father, and a ruler could not show favoritism to weakness. Erin bowed and took her place among the royal heirs, her brace gleaming in the lantern light like a wound that would not heal. Lord Zyrak Kale stepped forward to address the court. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with skin polished to mirror perfection. No scar marred his form, no blemish dared remain. His voice carried like a blade sliding free of its sheath. "Your Majesty, nobles of the High Council," Zyrak began, his tone respectful but edged. "The matter of succession grows ever more urgent. The Empire thrives, yet questions linger, questions about heirs who do not represent our people's highest ideals." The chamber hushed. All eyes turned toward Erin. Zyrak's gaze lingered on her brace, then lifted to her face with the faintest curl of disdain. "How can we present imperfection to the galaxy as our symbol of strength? Already, suitors decline. No noble house will bind its lineage to weakness." The sting hit harder than any whisper. Erin kept her hands folded in her lap, forcing her breath to remain steady. If she flinched, if she showed the slightest crack, the court would devour her. Her brother Eric shifted beside her, jaw tight. He opened his mouth to speak, but Erin gave him a minute shake of her head. She did not need a shield. Not here. Not now. The Emperor's voice finally broke the silence. "The Council will not strip my daughter of her name, Lord Zyrak. You will speak no further of succession today." Zyrak bowed smoothly, though the flicker of triumph in his eyes betrayed his satisfaction. The seed was planted. The whispers would grow. The proceedings dragged on, trade disputes, border skirmishes, ceremonial declarations, but Erin heard none of it. Her mind echoed with the words, damaged, unfit, unwanted. When the court finally dissolved, she retreated to the balcony overlooking Shira Prime. The world gleamed below, a living jewel swirled in clouds and seas. She had always loved this view. It reminded her that beauty existed beyond symmetry, beyond flawless lines. Her hand brushed the brace at her leg. Cold metal. Necessary. Every step she took was a reminder of how her people saw her, not as brilliant strategist, not as loyal daughter, not as woman, but as failure carved in flesh. "Your Highness," a voice announced. Erin turned as a young attendant bowed low. His eyes flickered nervously, as though delivering dangerous news. "The humans have arrived. Their delegation will attend the council tomorrow." "Humans," she repeated softly. The word tasted strange. She had studied their kind, resilient, impulsive, unrefined. Unlike the Valari, they did not hide their scars. Some even carried them as marks of pride. Curiosity flickered through her guarded thoughts. Would they see her as her own people did? Would they glance at her brace, sneer, and look away? Or would they simply not care? "Very well," she said. Her voice regained its calm mask. "Prepare accommodations. They will expect formality, even if they do not understand it." The attendant bowed again and left. Alone once more, Erin let her composure falter. For a single heartbeat she allowed her shoulders to sag, her eyes to close. Loneliness pressed down on her heavier than any brace. She had accepted long ago that no Valari suitor would stand beside her. Yet tonight, staring into the endless stars, she allowed herself a forbidden thought. Perhaps someone, somewhere, might see beyond the flaw. The night winds carried the distant hum of ships arriving in orbit. Foreign engines, foreign lives. Erin straightened her spine, resetting her mask of poise. Tomorrow she would meet them. Tomorrow she would endure the same stares, the same whispers, the same quiet rejections. And yet, beneath the practiced calm, something unfamiliar stirred. Not hope exactly, something quieter, sharper. A question, simple but dangerous. What if they looked at me differently? The grand reception chamber glowed with cold brilliance. Crystal arches stretched overhead, their edges cut so sharply the light fractured into 1,000 pale fires. Volari nobles lined the walls in perfect formation, robes heavy with jewels, expressions carved from ice. Every gesture was measured, every glance calculated to display superiority. At the far end, the doors opened. The human delegation entered. They looked almost crude against such flawless symmetry, broad-shouldered, heavy-footed, wrapped in fabric too simple by Volari standards. Yet their movements carried a confidence that did not seek approval. They walked as though the weight of watching eyes meant nothing. Princess Erin stood near the dais beside her father, keeping her posture still, her features calm. She had studied reports on humanity, but nothing prepared her for the raw presence they carried into the chamber. The leader of the group, Ambassador Rena Holt, bowed low in the Volari manner, though the gesture seemed stiff, borrowed rather than lived. Behind her came a man who did not bother with mimicry. He stood tall, head unbowed, gaze steady. He was scarred, one long mark across his cheek, another cutting through his brow. His uniform fit simply, dark fabric without ornament. He looked utterly out of place in a hall of crystalline perfection, and yet, somehow, he belonged more than any noble draped in gems. "Commander Elias Voss," the herald announced, voice echoing through the hall. Human envoy and military advisor to the ambassador. Zyrak Kale's lips curved faintly as he leaned toward another noble. "They send us soldiers dressed as diplomats. How fitting for such a race." Erin caught the words but kept her eyes forward. Her gaze met Elias's for a heartbeat. Instead of sliding away as others always did, his eyes held hers. There was no pity in them, no disgust, only recognition, sharp and startling. Formal speeches filled the chamber, promises of cooperation, declarations of mutual respect. The ambassador spoke carefully, tripping only slightly over Volari honorifics. But Erin's attention drifted again and again to the scarred man who stood at her side, silent, observant, unshaken by pomp. When the ceremony ended, courtiers swept forward to swarm the humans with questions thinly veiled as compliments. Erin moved quietly to the edge of the dais, needing distance. That was when she heard the voice behind her. "You wear your crown like it's heavier than the palace itself." She turned. Elias Voss stood a respectful distance away, hands clasped behind his back. His voice was low, carrying no mockery, only blunt truth. "I am expected to," she replied evenly. "Expected," he repeated, studying her with those steady eyes. "That word always sounds like chains." Her lips almost curved before she caught herself. "Humans speak boldly in another sovereign's court." He shrugged. "We don't polish words the way your people do. We speak them plain." Her gaze flicked to the scar across his cheek. "And your scars? You leave them unhealed." "They remind me of where I've been," he said simply. "Each one's a story. Proof that I endured." The words struck her harder than they should have. For Volari, scars were shameful, signs of failure. To display them openly was unthinkable. Yet here he stood, unashamed, even proud. "You think endurance is beauty?" she asked softly. "I think truth is," Elias replied. His tone held no hesitation, no attempt to flatter. Before she could answer, Zyrak approached, his smile polished sharp. "Commander Voss," he said smoothly, "your presence is unusual for diplomacy. Do humans often send their scarred soldiers as envoys? Or was this meant to be symbolic?" Elias's gaze never wavered. "I fought for my people. That doesn't make me less suited to speak for them. It makes me more." Zyrak's smile thinned. How quaint. In Valari courts, flawlessness is the measure of worth. And yet, Elias said, glancing at Aaron for a moment before returning his stare to Zyrak, flawlessness seems to keep your nobles staring at each other instead of seeing what's right in front of them. A ripple of shock moved through the nearby courtiers. No one spoke to Zyrak that way. Aaron's pulse quickened. For the first time in years, someone had spoken a truth aloud that mirrored the quiet anger she carried. Zyrak's eyes narrowed, but he only inclined his head with practiced grace. "Enjoy your stay, Commander. I suspect it will be enlightening." With that, he turned away, leaving silence in his wake. Elias exhaled through his nose, amused. "Your nobles wield words like knives." "They cut just as deeply," Aaron admitted. "And yet," he said, meeting her gaze again, "you didn't flinch." She drew herself taller, hiding the warmth that rose in her chest. "A princess does not flinch." His expression softened. "No, but a person can." The honesty unsettled her more than Zyrak's barbs. She found herself looking away first, her eyes on the crystal floor. The formal gathering dispersed at last, nobles retreating in murmured clusters. Aaron slipped away to her private corridor. Yet as she walked, the echo of Elias's words stayed with her. Scars as proof. Endurance as strength. Chains called expectation. When she reached her chambers, she paused before the mirror. The faint bioluminescent marks along her cheek glimmered in the dim light. She had always seen them as blemishes, reminders of what she lacked. Tonight, she looked at them differently. Not flawless, but not empty either. She closed her eyes and let the thought settle. A human had looked at her and not turned away. Not once. The gardens of the Valari palace shimmered under twin moons, crystalline trees glowing with pale fire, fountains spilling water that chimed like glass. Princess Erin often came here when courtly noise suffocated her, though she rarely found true quiet. Whispers and stares always followed. Tonight, however, she was not alone by accident. Elias Voss leaned against a carved pillar, arms folded, watching the flowing light of the fountains. His presence unsettled the carefully arranged symmetry of the garden. Where everything was polished to flawlessness, he carried imperfection like armor. "You followed me," Erin said, her voice calm though her pulse quickened. "I walked," Elias replied. "You happened to be ahead of me." Her lips curved faintly. "Do humans always bend truth so casually?" "No," he said. "But we bend rules when the truth needs saying." He nodded toward her. "And truth is you didn't want to be in that hall tonight." She looked away, watching the water break into prisms. "It is not my place to want. A princess endures." "That word again," Elias murmured. "Endure. Like a prison sentence." Her gaze snapped back to him. "You speak boldly for someone who knows little of my people." "I know enough," he said evenly. "I saw a room of nobles treating you like an ornament. Like your worth is measured by how well you disappear into perfection." The words cut deeper than she wished to admit. She drew a sharp breath, then asked, "And what do humans see when they look at me?" He held her eyes without flinching. "Someone real." Her chest tightened. No Valari had ever answered so plainly. Every suitor chosen for her had turned away when they learned of her flaws. Yet this scarred soldier, stranger to her world, spoke as though she needed no apology for existing. "You speak as though you know me," she said quietly. "I'd like to," Elias replied. Silence hung between them, filled with the chiming of water and the glow of moons. Erin's throat tightened with unspoken words. Then footsteps intruded. Zyrak Kale emerged from the archway, robes glimmering with embedded crystals. His smile was polished, his gaze cold. "Princess," he said smoothly, "the entire court noticed your prolonged absence. And here you are, in conversation with the human soldier. How curious." Elias did not move. His posture remained steady, though his jaw tightened. Erin's voice held steel when she replied. "My movements require no explanation to you, Zyrak." His smile thinned, but he bowed slightly. Of course not. Yet it does raise questions. Our traditions value purity and flawlessness in unions. The court whispers enough about your condition to be seen in the garden with a human. It will not be overlooked. Erin's hand curled at her side. Every word was a blade pressed against the scars she carried. Before she could answer, Elias stepped forward. "Then let the whispers end," he said, his voice low but carrying. "If your people demand clarity, I'll give it. I'll ask her openly." Zyrak's brows lifted in mocking amusement. "Ask her? What could you possibly?" Elias's words cut through. "Princess Erin, will you mate with me?" The garden stilled. Even the fountains seemed to hush. Erin's breath caught. Her people used the word union, ceremonial and cold. But Elias had said it raw, unvarnished. Not arrangement. Not alliance. A question that held no demand, only choice. Zyrak's composure cracked for the first time. "Absurd," he hissed. "A crippled princess joined to a human soldier? You disgrace this court with barbaric theatrics." But Erin did not hear him. Her mind raced, her heart pounding in a rhythm she had not known possible. Elias's eyes held no pity, no calculation. Only sincerity. He had spoken what none in her empire dared even imagine, that her scars did not diminish her, that she might be wanted not despite them but with them. "You cannot be serious," Zyrak snapped, his voice sharpened with desperation. "Such unions are forbidden. Her bloodline is pure Valari. To taint it with—" Elias's gaze cut to him, steady as stone. "Purity means nothing if it rots the soul. I don't care about bloodlines. I care about her." The words struck like thunder. Erin felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Zyrak, trembling with fury he dared not unleash in open defiance, hissed, "The council will crush this insolence." He spun on his heel, his robe snapping behind him as he stormed away into the archway's shadows. Silence fell once more, heavy and breathless. Erin turned slowly back to Elias. Her voice shook despite her effort. "You would speak so openly? You would shame yourself before my court?" "Shame?" Elias asked. "To ask you, not your crown, not your bloodline, but you, to stand with me?" Her vision blurred with sudden heat. No one had ever spoken to her like that. For a lifetime, she had been reduced to a symbol, an imperfect piece on a flawless board. Now, here was a man scarred by battles, daring to see her as more than the weakness whispered about in every hall. "You don't even know me," she whispered. "I know enough to ask," he said. "The rest I'll learn, if you'll let me." Her heart pounded so loud she thought he must hear it. For the first time, choice lay in her hands, heavy and terrifying. She stepped closer, close enough that the glow of her faint bioluminescent scars reflected in his eyes. "Your words will bring ruin. Do you understand that?" He nodded once. "Then let ruin come. I've faced worse." Something inside her broke, not in despair but in release. The chains of expectation she had carried for years loosened. For the first time, she could imagine a life not dictated by flawless masks but by truth. "I cannot answer you tonight," she said at last, her voice trembling but firm. "But know this, Elias Voss, you have spoken words no one in my empire dared breathe, and I will not forget them." His gaze softened, steady as ever. "That's all I ask." The council chamber was a cathedral of light. Vaulted arches rose into crystalline ceilings that refracted the glow of 1,000 energy prisms, casting shifting rainbows across polished stone. To most, it was meant to inspire awe. To Elias, it felt like a blade disguised as beauty. He stood at the center, flanked by armored sentinels whose weapons hummed faintly with restrained energy. Around him, a half-circle of counselors sat on elevated thrones, their robes shimmering like woven starlight. Each face wore the same mask of elegant disdain. At the far end, Princess Erin sat apart, her chair carved of pale crystal. Her posture was flawless, her face still, but Elias caught the tension in her hands, fingers curled into her lap. The High Counselor, Sereth Vair, spoke first. His voice was a measured cadence, polished by centuries of command. "Human soldier, you are brought before us accused of insolence and disruption of sacred order. You publicly proposed a union with the princess of Valari blood, defying millennia of law. What have you to say?" Elias's voice carried without strain. "I asked her a question. Nothing more." The chamber stirred with sharp murmurs. A counselor in silver robes leaned forward, eyes narrowed. "Your words were a provocation. A crude attempt to bind her into scandal. Do humans mistake insolence for courage?" Elias met the man's gaze without flinching. "Do Valari mistake control for wisdom?" A ripple of outrage burst across the chamber. One counselor slammed his hand on the crystalline armrest, the sound echoing like a crack of thunder. "You dare insult us in our own hall?" Erin spoke at last, her voice steady though her pulse raced. "Enough." The single word cut the noise. All eyes turned to her. She rose slowly, her gown catching light, her scars faintly glowing against flawless skin. For years she had been taught to hide them, to turn her face just so in court. Tonight, she did not. "The human spoke no insult," she continued, meeting each gaze in turn. "He asked me, not the crown, not the council. And I will not pretend I was offended." The silence that followed was heavier than shouting. Saratha's jaw tightened. "Princess, you tread dangerous ground. You are heir to a bloodline unbroken since the Ascension. To even entertain his words is treachery to your people." Her voice sharpened. "Treachery, or choice? Have we grown so fragile that one question can shake the pillars of Valari order?" Whispers spread like wildfire. Some counselors avoided her gaze, others stared with open hostility. Zyrak Kale, standing near the dais as if awaiting his moment, seized it now. "You see, honored counselors? The human corrupts her with barbaric notions. If unchecked, this will poison the empire. I volunteer to cleanse this shame. Remove the soldier from our world. Permanently." Elias shifted subtly, ready to move if weapons raised, but kept his voice calm. "There it is. Not concern for tradition, just hunger for control." Zyrak sneered. "Control is the foundation of civilization. Without it, your species would still be crawling in mud." "Maybe," Elias said, "but at least in the mud, we decide who we are." The chamber erupted again, overlapping voices clashing like storm winds. Some shouted for removal, others hissed for silence. Through it all, Erin stood tall, her scars luminous in the chamber's fractured light. She did not shout. She waited, and when the noise thinned, she spoke with calm that cut sharper than rage. "You fear him because he asks what none of you dare ask. What if I am more than the mask you built for me?" The words stunned them into stillness. Saratha's eyes narrowed like a blade edge. "You forget yourself, princess. Your role is to preserve the perfection of the throne, not dismantle it." Her hands trembled, but she did not lower her gaze. "Perfection," she whispered, the word bitter. Then louder, "Perfection is a cage. And I am done pretending it is anything else." Gasps cut through the chamber. Elias felt something in his chest shift, an echo of battlefields where soldiers refused orders and chose to fight for each other instead of dying for commands. Sarath rose slowly from his throne, his robe shimmering with pale fire. "So be it. If you will not preserve the line, then we shall decide for you. The council rules. The human will be confined until deportation is arranged. You, princess, will be sequestered until you remember your duty." Erin's stomach knotted, but she did not falter. "And if I refuse?" The High Counselor's smile was a thin blade. "Then you will learn that the throne does not bend to rebellion. Even yours." Two sentinels stepped forward, weapons humming higher. Elias tensed, but Erin lifted a hand slightly. "Wait." Her mind raced. The council would bury her alive in seclusion. Elias would vanish into chains, then be sent back to whatever fate awaited. If she yielded now, she would vanish forever into obedience. If she resisted, openly, decisively, everything could break. She looked at Elias. His eyes met hers, steady, unwavering, a silent promise that he would not abandon her, even in chains. Something inside her steadied. "No," she said. The chamber froze. "No," Sereth repeated, his voice rising for the first time. "I will not be sequestered," Aaron said clearly. "And he will not be taken." Elias almost smiled. Almost. The council erupted in fury, shouts overlapping, accusations hurled like fire. Zyrak's voice cut through, triumphant. "Seize them both!" The sentinels raised their weapons. Energy hummed, casting lethal blue light across the polished floor. Elias shifted into motion, battle instincts flaring, but before violence broke loose, Aaron stepped forward and unleashed her voice. Not the careful tones drilled into her since childhood, but the raw cry of someone done with chains. "I am Valari heir. You move against me at peril." The chamber stilled. The sentinels hesitated. Even Sereth faltered. By blood and law, she was right. Her claim to authority, though controlled, was absolute. Her chest heaved, but her voice remained steady. "If you cage me, you cage your future. If you silence me, you silence the very throne you claim to serve. Is that your legacy?" The silence stretched, taut as wire. Finally, Sereth sank back into his throne, eyes cold as obsidian. "Very well. No chains. For now. But remember this, princess, the council endures long after heirs falter. Choose your steps carefully. A single misstep, and both you and your human will fall into silence." The session ended not with triumph, but with threat hanging heavy in the crystalline air. Elias was released, though under watch, and Aaron returned to her chambers escorted by guards who looked at her as though she had become something alien. The night after the council session, the palace no longer felt like home. Aaron sat by the window of her chamber, staring at the spires of the capital city. The lights stretched into the horizon like stars captured on the ground, yet she had never felt more caged. Guards stood outside her doors, not protectors but wardens. A knock broke the silence. When the door cracked open, Elias slipped inside under the watch of a reluctant attendant. His presence steadied her, a reminder she wasn't alone. "They're rattled," he said quietly, settling against the wall. "That's why they're pushing so hard. They think if they scare you enough, you'll fold." Aaron turned from the window, the glow of her scars faint against the moonlight filtering in. "That's what they've always counted on, fear. For years, I gave them silence. But silence only fed their power." Elias studied her, then asked the question he had been holding back since the chamber. "What are you going to do?" The words hung heavy. Her choice could alter not just her own life, but the fate of her people. Before she could answer, a soft vibration filled the air. The door slid open and Zyrak Kale entered without invitation, armored and self-assured, 2 sentinels at his back. His smile was sharp. "Princess," he said smoothly, "the council has deliberated. Tomorrow, you will formally renounce your defiance. A ceremony is prepared, an oath of loyalty to tradition. You will denounce the human as a momentary lapse, nothing more. Refuse, and consequences will follow swiftly." Aaron rose, her voice even. "And what of Elias?" Zyrak's eyes glinted. "Deportation. If he resists, execution." Elias didn't flinch, but his jaw tightened. "How generous!" The envoy leaned closer, his voice a venomous whisper meant for Aaron alone. "You know this path leads nowhere. You cling to scars as though they give you strength. But all they give you is shame. Return to the role you were born to, and all of this will fade." Aaron's hand twitched at her side. 4 years, that poison had been poured into her ears. Tonight, it curdled into steel. "I will not denounce him," she said. The words cracked through the room like lightning. Zyrak's smile faltered. "Then you seal your fate." He left without waiting for reply, the echo of his boots a promise of conflict. When the door shut, Elias finally spoke. "He means it. They'll break you, or worse, if you stand against them." Aaron looked at him, eyes fierce despite the storm inside her. "Then let them try. I will not bow again." The next morning, the council chamber brimmed with tension. Nobles filled the galleries, drawn by rumors of the princess's defiance. The chamber itself seemed sharper, colder, as if the crystalline walls braced for violence. Sereth Vare stood at the dais. "Princess Erin," he intoned, "you are summoned to swear your loyalty and reject the false union you allowed to taint this court. Speak now, and this council will show mercy." Every eye pressed on her. The weight was crushing, yet she felt Elias's presence at her side, unyielding. She stepped forward, her scars visible, refusing to hide them. "No." The single word detonated across the chamber. Sereth's composure cracked. "You defy not only this council but the throne itself." Her voice rang clear. "The throne is not your cage. It is meant to guide our people, not silence them. You wield tradition as a weapon, not as wisdom. That ends today." A stir rippled through the nobles. Some faces lit with awe, others twisted with fury. Zyrak surged forward, hand raised. "Then you are unfit. You abandon the perfection that defines Valari blood." Erin met his fury with calm steel. "Perfection is a lie. Scars do not weaken me. They remind me I survived. And survival, not illusion, is what will lead our people into the future." The hall erupted into chaos. Counselors shouted over each other. Guards tightened their grip on weapons. Sereth's voice cut through the din. "Seize her. Seize them both." The sentinels advanced. Energy hummed hot in the air. Elias moved instinctively, stepping between Erin and the advancing guards. His voice was low, steady. "You'll have to go through me." Erin touched his shoulder. "No, Elias. Through us." She stepped forward beside him. Together, they faced the chamber, one human soldier and one scarred princess, a unity the council could not tolerate. "Look at them," Erin called to the nobles. "They would rather shackle your heir than let her speak truth. They would destroy a man for daring to care. If this is the future they offer, is it one you will accept?" The gallery shifted. Murmurs grew into shouts, not all in agreement, but no longer uniform obedience. Some nobles stood, emboldened. Others glared, afraid of change. The chamber fractured. Zyrak drew his blade, its edge blazing with radiant energy. "Then let blood decide." He lunged. Elias met him with raw precision, catching the strike with the haft of a fallen guard's weapon. Sparks spat across the floor. The clash of steel and energy filled the hall. Erin did not retreat. She raised her voice above the fight. "You claim to protect the throne, Zyrak, but all you protect is your power. The throne belongs to the people, and I will not let you twist it any longer." Her words struck deeper than any blade. Some sentinels faltered, lowering weapons, unsure. The unity of control cracked. With a final shove, Elias sent Zyrak crashing to the crystalline floor. The man's blade clattered away, light sputtering out. Gasps swept the chamber. Breathing hard, Elias lifted his gaze to the council. "This isn't about me. It's about her right to choose. And if you fear that choice, maybe it's because you know she's right." Silence followed, long and heavy. Finally, Sereth rose, his face pale with fury but his voice trembling with restraint. "This is not the end. The council does not yield to rebellion. We will deliberate." Erin answered before he could retreat behind formality. "Deliberate all you want. But the people have heard me. And they will not forget." For the first time, she saw doubt flicker in Sereth's eyes. Later, as the chamber emptied in uneasy silence, Elias turned to her. "You just painted a target on both of us." Erin's lips curved, not in fear, but in quiet triumph. "Then let them aim. At least now they see me." He studied her, then gave a rare smile. "Not just you. Us." She reached for his hand, not caring who watched, not caring what it meant. For once, she chose, not as a princess molded by expectation, but as herself. And in that choice, the future shifted.